coming back to this cartoon, a lot of people are having the emotional response to like watching it on Saturday mornings and, you know, remembering what that cartoon was for them. And it makes me question, like, what did Beau DeMayo do to get let go from this project?
This is Deadline on April 13th. XMen 97 creator Beau DeMayo breaks silence following exit to give context.
Just makes me happy to see it, especially when we have what looks to be a fantastic Deadpool and Wolverine movie coming out around the corner. They had all this great X-Men shit in the comics, and they're finally getting some respect outside of that media.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a big year for mutants in Marvel.
It's the year of the mutants, and I couldn't be happier.
It's Wolverine's 50th anniversary. You've got the Krakoan era just ended, which anybody that watches my content knows how much of a fan I am of that.
Yeah.
Or it's not just ended, it's about to end. We're like at the end of it right now.
And we know what's coming up, kind of, sort of. We have an idea of what's next.
Yeah, and there's like an excellent roster of creators that are going to be on the comics, working on them, like Gail Simone, you know what I mean? Like back on X-Men, that's amazing. But then and you can like tell in the branding that they're trying to kind of recall that 90s vibe along with the cartoon, and it's working for me. Nostalgia bait doesn't really usually work on me, but man, they're really hitting it just right with this X-Men stuff.
Yeah, I feel like coming back to this cartoon, a lot of people are having the emotional response to like watching it on Saturday mornings and, you know, remembering what that cartoon was for them. And it makes me question, like, what did Beau DeMayo do to get let go from this project? Because this is so based.
So I don't know if you saw where I'd seen some people talking about what it might have been, or what somebody said that's what it was, and it's just rumor. I don't know if we want to talk about that because it's something that's not really. I don't want to talk about it because it's not my angle. You know what I mean? But it's a rumor. It's just a rumor. But if it's true, it's kind of fucked up and weird. But
I would also add, like, we haven't seen actual like I remember reading that, but no receipts have actually come out. And if that is true, there would be receipts. So
fair enough, yeah, like screenshots and stuff.
Yeah.
This is Deadline on April 13th. XMen 97 creator Beau DeMayo breaks silence following exit to give context to episode 5. That being
Remember It.
Remember It. The episode, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Beau DeMayo breaks the silence after exiting. Took to social media to discuss episode 5, Remember It, and gave context to the shocking episode. A lot of questions, and so I'll momentarily break silence to answer. He said on Twitter, episode 5 was the centerpiece of my pitch to Marvel in November 2020. The idea being to have the X-Men mirror the journey that any of us who grew up in the original show have experienced since being kids in the 90s. The world was a seemingly safer place for us, where a character like Storm would comment on how skin-based racism was quaint.
I have to serve you jerks from the college, but I ain't putting up with any trouble from their kind.
Skin color prejudice? That's so pathetic, it's almost quaint.
It ain't quaint.
For the most part, to our young minds, the world was a simple place of right and wrong, where questions about identity and social justice had relatively clear-cut answers. He said that everyone's perceptions of the world changed following the attacks of September 11th, 2001. Things weren't so safe anymore. Grassroots populist movements began to rise around the world as a whole nation struggled to deal with collective trauma and fracture at the seams of every diverse demographic. The effects we still feel today and have only been exacerbated by more collective traumas like COVID or several recessions. He said he wanted the episode to reflect on similar attacks in American history. Yes, it looked like Gambit's story was going in a specific direction. The crop top was chosen to make you love him. Him pulling off his shirt was intentional. There's a reason he told Rogue any fool would suffer her hand in a dance, even if it ended up not being him suffering. But if events like 9/11, Tulsa, Charlottesville, or Pulse nightclub teach us anything, it's that too many stories are often cut far too short. I partied at Pulse. It was my club. I have so many great memories of this awesome white lounge. It was, like Genosha, a safe space for me and everyone like me to dance and laugh and be free. I thought about this a lot when crafting this season and this episode, and how the gay community in Orlando rose to heal from that event. Like many of us who grew up on the OG cartoon, the X-Men have now been hit hard by the realities of an adult and unsafe world. Life's happened to them. and they, like we did, will have to decide which parts of themselves they will cling to and which parts they'll let go of in order to do what they've been telling humanity to do: face an uncertain future they never saw coming. As Trask told Cyclops in the premiere, you have no idea what it's like to be left behind by the future. Now the X-Men do, and like each of us, they'll have to weigh whether this is a time for social justice, or as Magneto preached at his trial, it's a time for social healing. I mean, the fact that he broke silence and didn't say a goddamn thing about his own personal situation and just addressed this, that made me actually respect the shit out of him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very.
And that's why I was like, I really hope that those crappy rumors that I read about are not true, because this is a good look for him. You know, and I want to like it. So.
And
yeah, I'm trying to
done a great job with the series. No matter what, you can't take that from him.
Yeah, I'm just curious how much we're actually going to get out of this, because I feel like with the success of the series, it's made it harder for Disney and Beau to sweep all this under the rug. I feel like something's going to have to give, because the fan demand is through the roof on why he's no longer part of the show. So,
well, I mean, now that we're talking about it, that might be a big reason why the Chuds aren't covering it, because if they had acknowledged this show is good, they have to acknowledge Beau DeMayo he's the head writer, right? Like, that's essentially saying, oh yeah, that the gay guy that we called a groomer and said all this shit about or whatever, like he actually wrote a fucking amazing show.
So the reason why it sort of frustrates me when a lot of these channels went so hard against the X-Men not being allegories for like gay people and speaking to the queer community and things like that, it's always baffling to me, because the X-Men, when we're talking about superhero media, the X-Men have been the most prevalent superhero comic book mentioned in my lifetime in the gay community, whether it be Storm, Wolverine, another one of the random X-Men characters over the years that people have gravitated towards. It's always spoken to the gay community, because the idea of how mutation works in Marvel Comics, whether intentional or not, always felt very closely related to people coming out in their lives and addressing that with their parents and dealing with, gender identity and sexuality. And so it's no surprise to me that, these stories being written, at least the lead writer being someone who is gay, having input on it, having it resonate so much with so many people, it's just not shocking to me at all. And so I absolutely love the fact that that's the touch we're getting on the stories. And again, if you're reading modern X-Men, and I know a lot of the guys that they are railing against Marvel and all the different stuff or whatever. And Dane, you would know this more than a lot of people, is that modern X-Men leans into every single bit of allegory you could possibly imagine when it comes to what mutants are versus the world. Yep. And the queerness is it's not the entire story, but is definitely a big part of it. There's a lot of characters who are X-Men or X-Men adjacent who are queer characters that are existing in that world. It only makes sense because, I mean, look at how many mutations are so prevalent now in Marvel. I mean, we're beyond the no more mutants thing. We're getting more and more characters coming out with powers and being a part of that universe. And so these are the readers. There's a guy on Twitter who some people might be familiar with, Chris Bacon. He's been on several podcasts with me. He travels for work and he goes into the comic book shops and always asks them, like, are people actually coming in and buying this kind of stuff? And the answer has been an overwhelmingly yes, positive, like, response to that. Like, people saying that this is what readers want. These are what people are asking for. We're not getting people coming in complaining about woke. We're not getting people coming in complaining about gay stuff in comic books. It's not what comic shops are seeing. It is almost a terminally online thing with people who don't actually read comic books.
Well, I mean, you know, the fact is that these are Marvel, Warner Media are corporations. Like, they're not going to make continue to make content for years and years at this point. That is just, nobody actually wants this. And, you know, it's just like forced down their throat. Like, people are fucking buying it and they're enjoying it, you know, and right. That's the thing. That's the reason that they're making the content and trying to, you know, downplay its relevance, because it actually is relevant and it is wanted. Now let's look at this conversation that I believe this is the direct influence of the scene in X-Men 2 with Iceman and his mom and his parents whenever they go to his house and she's like, can't you just not be a mutant or whatever? this is it's more focused on his dad being the bigot in this, and he's much more aggressive about it. But like, so Iceman and Rogue go to Iceman's house to just kind of get away from everything. His dad says, "Is it too much to ask that you bring home a normal girl?" And he's like, "Define normal girl. Normal girl. Don't you dare start using your blasted powers of yours in my home. You can pal around with your friends all day, but I will not tolerate you turning this house into a sideshow. I won't have it. You're the one trotting out the same old circus act. One week she's Italian, the next week it's Japanese. Now this one is what? Had a mutant? Man, like, what an asshole."
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. You're disgusted by anything that doesn't fit in your limited definition of normal. Sorry if I disappointed you, Dad. Wow, I wonder if this is commenting on anything at all.
It's almost like it's an allegory for racism and bigotry. It's
Nah, I'm not getting anything.
I identify with the dad.
Well, okay, let's
I identify with the father.
These last couple of panels might clear it up. I don't know. So yeah, Rogue says, he says, "Sorry, I'm sorry I disappointed you, Dad. Sorry for you." And then Rogue says, "Maybe this isn't my place to." You got to do the my place to say this, Mr. Drake. But over the years, Bobby has told me a lot about you. He said, "You're an honest man, a hard worker, a veteran of war, and a loving husband. Maybe it's just because he didn't know for sure, but for today. But he never mentioned you were a bigot."
The word, they just come out and say it.
It's right there.
Yeah.
and then this fucking face, like,
damn. Here I thought Rogue was going to be a bit sympathetic.
Yeah.
And then there's another page here, conversation afterward, where they kind of, Bobby's kind of coping with the fact of like accepting his parents just pieces of shit.
The hardest choices require the strongest wills.